the electricity sector, we're actively trying to decarbonize that through Climatize's actions. But we run the risk that, hey, if electricity demand, grows so rapidly that we can't keep up with grid stability and resilience on the renewable side, then we may end up building more fossil fuels. Where are we now? We're in 2023. It's easy to talk about kind of year time frames, but 6 years from now and then 3 years remaining in this month, that's 72 months, 75 months away. If you break it down into those much more bite-size, kind of time frames, for us to essentially eliminate 50% of the global emissions in 75 months, we need to be moving very, very quickly to do that.
I talk a lot about this, and this is one of the reasons I'm spending time on this podcast, is I think there's a lot of hope. When you're forecasting that far out, it's like building out business models, right? If you no investor believes in your 5-year model, because it's so far out. And that's a lot of my view on this when it comes to these targets that we have. There's a lot of hope, but it's not rooted in reality. It's not like a bottoms-up model where you're just extrapolating something out and going, oh, this is how we're going to get there. It's just these, I see a lot of companies saying, we're going to get to this point. I'm like, okay, what are the milestones you're doing? How are you actually going to go drive to that? And so I love the momentum around climate. I think it's so good. My point and why spending time on a podcast like this, talking to interesting folks like yourself, is just to make sure the masses are equipped to understand really what's happening and can have a more intelligent conversation and create more pressure to kind of get a more movement to help us to achieve that. Because if you think about the ramifications of the industrial age since the 1950s, that's 70 plus years of, a wonderful booming economic time that was amazing. But it also is the reason we're in I think a big reason we're in the position that we're in when it comes to climate. So back to your point, you take 75 years, and I think would you say 75 months? Okay, how are we going to do that? That's kind of just nuts to think about on that level. And like I said, I think it's going to take everybody doing it.
Yeah, you bring up a really great point. And it is a multifaceted approach where, we have kind of buckets of emissions around the world. There are, there's transportation, there's the electricity system, there's the industrial kind of economy, there's commercial and residential, really homes, and then there's agriculture. And each one of those sectors each has a kind of carbon footprint, and some of them will be kind of shifting in their proportion. So for example, the electricity sector, we're actively trying to decarbonize that through Climatize's actions and renewable energy in particular. But again, that only makes up about 25% of total emissions. And as we go to decarbonize then the transportation sector, that proportion will shift as transportation represents less of a footprint. Electricity will have to expand in its overall kind of energy contribution to our overall energy system. And so long as we are, adding more renewable energy to that, that's great. But we run the risk that, hey, if electricity demand, grows so rapidly that we can't keep up with, grid stability and resilience on the renewable side, then we may end up building more fossil fuels, which, have a 40 to 60 year life cycle and can become stranded assets if we plan poorly on that front. So it has to be a very well coordinated and orchestrated kind of transition. And, networks like OfferUp actually play a very meaningful role in helping kind of create that more circular economy, providing second life to goods. If you think about, I've used OfferUp to sell like an old snowboard helmet. That snowboard helmet has an embedded carbon footprint, not only from the manufacturing of the plastics that went into it, the transportation of getting it to that place. There is an embedded carbon footprint in everything in the world around us. And, that kind of overall awareness is still growing. And so products that may not immediately shout climate, OfferUp very much falls in that bucket in playing a role. And I would love to know if you all had ever thought about kind of quantifying how much carbon emissions, your business has helped avoid.
Yeah. I mean, so you're bringing up the point of I think of circularity a lot. So like when the idea of OfferUp first started, I was pitching how it's good for the planet. That was like my first, but I realized that was a great byproduct, not a good way to really fundraise when you're talking about, a capitalist mindset. So I eventually put that like in the appendix, like, hey, this stuff matters, but it's not the first thing you say. And so if you think about, the aha moment I had in starting this company was the amount of value that was growing in urban areas. So if you look at, the last, especially since the 70s, everyone's been moving towards these urban areas. And so if you look at population growth, that's where all the value is sitting. So it's sitting in our homes, it's sitting in our retail stores, sitting in storage units. Like, I was looking at this problem. This is like before there was an Android phone. And I kept thinking, like, why is value continuing to accumulate? Our homes are getting bigger. We're having less kids. 10% of the U.S. population rent storage units. 25% of U.S. households with a 2-car garage can't park in their garage. You can wrap a 7x7 square around every man, woman, and child in this country of storage space. That's how much storage space we have in the U.S. Wow. And so you look at all this, and you think about, like, we literally have huge retailers that have billions of dollars of unused stuff just sitting in warehouses all around the country. And so you think about this and you go, okay, where is all this stuff going? Where does all the Amazon stuff go? Right? And so a lot of, I think, what helps us to really drive change is local. It is circularity. What about our waste stream? Think about the amount of value that's just getting thrown in the trash every day. And to us, back to the point of, it's no big deal, whatever. But if you could tap into that, I think when we can be more thoughtful on that, I just feel like it's a really good thing. But it is a big challenge. It is a big challenge to figure out, how do you unlock a lot of that value? And I always go back to friction. And so we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the smartphone. Like, the smartphone really enabled us to reimagine kind of how you could buy and sell things. So